Chad Shelton is a 70-centimeter tall white toddler. When the 11-month-old baby dies under mysterious circumstances, the autopsy provides few clues. But the pathologist notices something unusual. The liver is enlarged, yellow in color, and shows the first signs of tissue decay. He had never seen anything like this in a child before. The tissue samples are sent to the laboratory for further tests. Sally and Bruce Shelton have been married for 2 years and live in Omaha, Nebraska, in the Midwest. Sally works for an insurance company. Bruce is a television technician. They spend most of their free time with their 11-month-old son, Chad, whom they adore. On Sunday morning, September 10th, Sally and Bruce have a lot planned. They want to go shopping, run various errands, and clean the carpets in their new home. After cleaning the house, they plan to buy some new furniture. Like any young family, they have a limited budget and don't want to buy everything at once. That day, they visit a furniture store to buy new lamps and make their apartment look fancy. After buying furniture, they visit Sally's sister and stop by a children's birthday party. On the way home, they stop at a Mexican drive-in restaurant. Later that night, 11-month-old Chad Shelton falls ill. He is pale, apathetic, and constantly vomiting. His whole body is shaking. He is immediately taken to Emmanuel Medical Center, where nurse Linda Dietrich is on night duty. Within a few hours, Chad begins to bleed from every orifice. I was very worried. It looked like he was dying before my eyes. The doctors ordered a series of blood tests. Chad's platelet count was 19,000, well below the norm of 140,000, and his blood sugar level was 11, a sign of severe liver failure. Blood was oozing from the edges of his eyes and the corner of his mouth. Blood had pooled in every pore and was seeping out of his entire body. Despite all the tests, the doctors couldn't find anything. Platelets are small cells that protect against bleeding to death. When they are so small, people can bleed spontaneously from any part of the body. Early the next morning, Chad Shelton's heart rate drops to 40 beats per minute and then falls even further. Doctors and nurses fight desperately to resuscitate him. 2 days after being admitted to hospital, Chad dies. Just a few hours later, another patient is brought to the emergency room with the same symptoms, with extreme internal bleeding and already in a coma. This time it's a 25-year-old truck driver. Something is totally wrong here. These are actually 2 healthy people, and now we have a little dead baby and a 25-year-old man who is dying, and we don't know what's going on with them. Whatever killed Chad Shelton, doctors now fear it's spreading. 25-year-old Dwayne Johnson was painting his house when he suddenly feels unwell. He gets headaches and muscle aches. Almost at the same time, chills, diarrhea, and severe vomiting set in, and Dwayne Johnson bleeds profusely from the nose. He is taken by ambulance to Emmanuel Medical Center, the same hospital that treated Chad Shelton. When Johnson is admitted, he is in a coma. Blood is seeping from his eyes, nose, and ears. And like Chad Shelton, his platelet count is extremely low. He was very sick. He was bleeding internally in several places, and the blood was probably seeping into many internal organs. His right pupil is fixed and dilated. The left one is a tiny dot, signs of bleeding in the left side of his brain. The body is incapable of movement and does not respond to pain stimuli. Dr. Fickler makes a prognosis. The patient is in a neurological state from which he can no longer be brought out. The outlook is dire. A few hours later, Dwayne Johnson dies. Linda Dietrich, Chad Shelton's nurse, discovers a disturbing coincidence. Dwayne Johnson was Chad Shelton's uncle. What is killing these people? Is it a contagious disease? Is it a virus that we don't know yet? Soon there are more cases. Chad's parents, Bruce and Sally, sometimes develop similar symptoms. Dwayne Johnson's daughter Sherry also suddenly falls ill. Health officials are called to an emergency meeting to find out the cause of this mysterious outbreak. The Center for Preventive Health Care in Atlanta is also called in. The investigation is assigned to the experienced toxicologist Dr. Renate Kimbrough. She already knows from the autopsy reports that whatever killed these two people leaves no trace. It only attacks the liver. The people got sick very quickly. It didn't match any contagious disease that I knew of. The people didn't have a fever, for example. When an infectious disease breaks out so quickly, you normally have a fever, often a very high fever. But these people didn't have that. The health officials are desperately looking for clues. Is it something in the cleaning product that parents used on the carpet? Or the Mexican food from the drive-in restaurant? Dwayne Johnson painted his house just before he died. Is it something in the paint? During their investigation, officers found out that the last time Chad Shelton and Dwayne Johnson were together was at a family reunion. At Dwayne Johnson's house about a week before they died, the other family members who developed symptoms were also there. Of course, we took all kinds of samples. Water samples, even samples of isolates from the soil in the garden, and of course the paint. Every food item in the house was checked. Anything that could have caused the illness in this family. The filter is missing from the air conditioning unit in Dwayne Johnson's house. It's under a tree where birds nest. The officers test the soil for Histoplasma capsulatum, a yeast-like fungus caused by bird droppings. And in the kitchen, the investigators confiscate fireworks they find on the counter. They also find out that lemonade was served at the family reunion. Everyone who drank lemonade got sick. The 3 who didn't drink it remain healthy. Unfortunately, there is no lemonade left, and the plastic container is already washed out. In the laboratory of the Center for Preventive Health Care, scientists analyze the fireworks and discover yellow phosphorus in them. In large quantities, phosphorus can be toxic, but this amount is too small. They pour a citric acid solution into the empty lemonade container in the hope of extracting trace elements from the plastic, but the attempt fails. The tests of the water, the lemonade, and the sugar in the lemonade are also all negative, and the soil in front of Dwayne Johnson's house does not contain the suspected fungus caused by bird droppings. The daughter, Sherry Johnson, survives the mysterious illness thanks to a quick blood transfusion, but she suffers serious liver damage. As Dr. Kimbrough continues her investigation, she is baffled. She has never seen such damage to a human liver before. But when she looks it up in a pathology textbook, she notices a photograph that shows something surprisingly similar. It is the liver tissue of a person who has been poisoned by a cancer-causing agent. Dimethylnitrosamine, abbreviated DMN, is a carcinogenic substance that is administered to animals in cancer research. It is water-soluble, highly toxic, only affects the liver, and leaves no traces at autopsy. Professor Gerald Covert is one of the leading toxicologists in Austria. With hundreds of thousands of toxins, nitrosamines pose a particular danger to humans and animals. Nitrosamine compounds affect the body by damaging the DNA and can therefore cause severe tissue damage. The liver is particularly affected by this. The paralysis of the liver is destroyed. During experiments with nitrosamines, it quickly became clear that they pose a high health risk if used carelessly or wantonly. It turned out many years ago that it is a very strong carcinogen. For this reason, it was withdrawn from circulation and is no longer available to the general public as a chemical. The scientists now suspect that it is a crime. The police are looking for someone who works at a cancer research facility and knows the family. Chad and Dwayne may have been murdered. The police assume that the poison was in the lemonade because it is water-soluble. Everyone who drank lemonade that day either got sick or died. But there is no proof. Latish Bad Burchard is in charge of the Omaha Homicide Squad. He reads about the deaths and the medical investigation in the newspaper, and it soon seems suspicious to him too. Something like this doesn't just happen, so we took a closer look. Burchard interviews the bereaved family members, including Dwayne Johnson's wife Sandy. He asks whether anyone could possibly be angry with the family or individual members. They all say no. Burchard routinely searches the police records, and when he enters the name Dwayne Johnson, he finds something surprising. When Dwayne and Sandy Johnson were just married, there was an altercation with Sandy's former boyfriend. While searching for the murderer of Chad Shelton and Dwayne Johnson, Lieutenant Bad Burchard learns of an incident that took place 3 years ago. Shortly after Dwayne and Sandy Johnson got married, a fight broke out in front of their house. Sandy's former boyfriend turns up. He shoots Sandy's brother and injures him in the shoulder. He fires another shot through the window. Sandy is then able to stop him from causing any more damage, and the attacker leaves the scene. The man's name is Stephen Roy Harper. He had met Sandy in the 6th form. Harper was an excellent student. He was a quiet loner who wanted to become a veterinarian. Sandy was Harper's first girlfriend. He was very shy around girls. As a child, he had been seriously injured in a house fire, which left him scarred, both physically and mentally. After the attack, Harper was arrested and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Lieutenant Burchard discovers that Harper has only served 1 year of this sentence. After Harper was released from prison, he took a job as a lab technician. The police obtain a search warrant for Harper's house. In the house, they find empty ampules and a textbook on organic chemistry, as well as handwritten notes. In the garage, they find evidence of animal testing. When we found the rat cages in the garage, we knew we were on the right track. It looked like the boy was experimenting on animals with this poison to see what would happen if you administered it to humans. A veterinarian tells police that a month before Dwayne Johnson and Sheldon's deaths, he treated Stephen Harper's dog and cat. Both had unexplained bleeding and died. I found blood in the urine and intestines, and also in the whites of the eyes. The police now have a lot of circumstantial evidence, but they have no proof that Stephen Harper is the poisoner. Whoever the killer is, he knew exactly how DMN works and how difficult it is to detect the poison. The poison is basically detectable today, but it breaks down very quickly in the body, so that an analysis would also have to be carried out very quickly. Once it has been metabolized, it is practically impossible to detect. The poison was ingested a week before death. But because the body has already broken it down, there is no murder weapon. The University of California. This is where cancer researcher Ronald Schenck conducts animal experiments. He is investigating how cancer-causing agents such as dementia alter DNA. Dimethylnitrosamine attacks the DNA of liver cells and leaves a chemical trace on the DNA. This trace leads to a change that initiates the cancer development process. Dr. Ronald Schenck then agrees to an experiment that he has never carried out before, an experiment on human organs. Toxicologist Renate Kimbrough sends him 8 coded liver samples and kidney tissue to carry out a blind test. One of the samples is from Dwayne Johnson, but Dr. Schenck doesn't know which one. He first soaks the tissue samples in sodium phosphate, then he puts them in a liquid and chops them up. The DNA splits off and collects at the bottom of the vial. These tiny cells contain the genetic blueprint for human life. A process for separating chemically related substances causes the components of the DNA to split off. A computer illustrates this on a graphic. 7 of the 8 DNA liver samples were completely normal. Only the DNA of one liver showed 2 additional maximum values. These maximum values were identical to those that would be found in people who had been exposed to nitrosamine. The liver sample belonged to Dwayne Johnson. Schenck and Kimbrough proved that DMN was involved. This ruled out any other known substance on Earth. Science provided the murder weapon, and Harper himself provided plenty of other clues. When Stephen Harper shot the Johnson family, he was obsessed with jealousy and anger over Sandy Johnson's rejection. In prison, Harper continued his strange behavior. He sent Sandy pictures depicting her as a witch. Sandy cannot believe that her former boyfriend is capable of murder. Their unusual relationship is described by author Thomas Gillen in his book Toxic Love. She described her former boyfriend, Stephen Harper, as a peaceful and very loving person, a very good partner. He was not prone to violence. After prison, Harper got a job at the Cancer Institute. He published research reports. This is where Harper first learned about the deadly DMN. There was a newspaper article on the company notice board. It said that a German chemist had killed his wife with DMN in the jam. The police suspected that Harper had stolen the DMN from the locked fridge in the laboratory and experimented with it at home to find the right dose. Harper confided to a friend that he broke into Sandy and Dwayne's house one night when they weren't home. He pours the deadly DMN into the soda pop container in the refrigerator. The next Sunday afternoon, the Johnsons, the Sheldons, and the grandparents get together for their last family reunion. Dwayne has painted the house and quenches his thirst with 2 large glasses of lemonade. 11-month-old Chad drinks some lemonade from his cup. Sandy's parents don't drink lemonade, they drink coffee. Ironically, the presumed target of the attack, Sandy, doesn't drink lemonade. Dwayne dies because he drank 2 full glasses of lemonade, much more than the others, and Chad is simply too small to stand up to the poison. Stephen Harper is arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder and 3 counts of attempted murder. He is sentenced to death in the electric chair, but before the sentence is carried out, he commits suicide in his cell. Without scientific evidence, the Stephen Harper case would never have been solved.